Hello, welcome to Museum Monthly. I'm your host, Christina Perez, and I'm here with Nick Foster today from the Wilton Historical Society. And today we're going to talk about perfume. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what can you tell us about this perfume?
So actually, it's perfect timing with today being Valentine's Day because we are going to talk about a particular perfume company called Angelique. So Angelique was founded in 1946 by two Wilton residents, Lee Swartout and Charles Granville. And actually, neither of these guys were really in the perfume business.
Oh, wow.
Granville was a efficiency engineer, and Swartout had worked with a company that created cosmetic bottles, but he hadn't actually made the cosmetics themselves. And the two of them were commuting from Wilton to New York City and knew each other and said, you know what? I think we can make our perfume as opposed to just the stuff for it. Not really knowing anything about the industry, they started just sort of messing around. But eventually they came up with a few different fragrances. Their famous one was called Black Satin. So they weren't necessarily the best perfume creators, but what they're really good at was marketing. They understood marketing really well. So they came up with all these wacky ideas about how they were going to get people to smell this perfume. The first one that they came up with was actually, they had heard stories about people making it snow with dry ice by basically dropping it out of a plane. So they thought, what if we perfumed the dry ice with our perfume and dropped it over Bridgeport? And they had sort of announced this thing, and a bunch of media showed up in Bridgeport. The mayor of Bridgeport was like, there's already snow on the ground. Please don't do this. Just come and shovel the snow. You'd be more helpful. So they showed up. They dropped the dry ice out of a plane. Apparently, it didn't actually snow, although they claimed it did actually snow. No one else agrees that it did. It didn't smell like perfume at all. So it was sort of a failed first attempt at it. But they were undeterred. They tried a few other things. They actually delivered Black Satin to Syracuse, New York, a department store in Syracuse, New York, by a helicopter carrying a giant golden Easter egg filled with Black Satin for the store. And apparently sold $1,000 worth of Black Satin that same day, which in 1940s dollars was quite a bit. They actually tried to make it rain perfume on Paris at one point. That was a mixed success. But they just were trying anything to get Angelique perfume out in front of people. The probably the most famous one that people remember in Wilton was that they had a store actually right where close to what CVS today is in Wilton Center. They had a store, and they would pump out scented bubbles into Wilton Center. So a lot of Wiltonians in the 50s who were here in the 50s remember Angelique blowing perfumed bubbles out into Wilton Center, and that was their way to sort of get people's attention. So whether or not Angelique was the best perfume didn't really matter. They were just really good at getting the message out and saying, hey, you should look at the wacky thing we're doing, buy our perfume. So they were really entrepreneurs, and I've actually brought some from our collection here.
Awesome.
And you can see they had these really striking, depending on the item. So this was actually something. It was a soap. It was called Gold Satin. Were really apparently they did sort of marketing by focus group by basically asking their neighbors what they wanted to their product to be called. They jokingly said one of their neighbors wanted one of their perfumes to be called Steeple because it stinks to high heaven, which was apparently a failure, and they didn't attempt that. But they had these really striking gold pieces. They had, this was their Black Satin. So again, very easily recognizable shape. You'd see this in a department store and know right away what you were buying. They also handed out, we have in our collection they moved into men's cologne as well. So this was like a trio sampler that men could buy. And again, that really gold foil, like they knew how to catch your attention. So yeah, Angelique, they still technically exist. They've since been bought out by other companies. But for a long time, Angelique's, they were known here in Wilton as the Skunk Works because of how much it would smell when they were making their product. But yeah, Angelique, I know a lot of Wiltonians who've come out and said, oh, I remember that. That was always in my bathroom or in my bedroom because they were sort of the local store.
That's awesome. So I was listening to you, and you mentioned that they went to Paris. So was this like a worldwide type company, or was it mainly just like?
Yeah, so they were international. They started here. They're marketing to New York. Actually, it was interesting how they were sort of seen as crazy to get into the perfume world when they did. They started in 1946, so it was right after World War II. And it was at that point that the French perfume industry, which was sort of considered, as you might imagine, the peak of perfumes, was actually kind of coming back around and returning to American markets. So a lot of people were like, you're nuts to think that you're going to compete with French perfumers. It made sense during the war when we couldn't get it over here, but doing it now is crazy, and it clearly worked. But they sold international. They sold all over Europe, all over the Americas. They were constantly trying to market to basically anybody they thought that would want to buy perfume. So even doing it in Paris, I don't know how successful it was for that attempt, but they were a company that was sort of worldwide.
Got it. And also, you mentioned that they went towards men's perfume. So originally, was it women's perfume and mainly towards women?
They started out with 6 Scents, and when they first started, Black Satin was the most famous. It was purely meant to be women's perfume, but as their sort of market share, as it were, got more and more, they realized that they wanted to branch out and try new things, and they kind of joked that they were, in their Wilton offices, just sort of mixing scents and smells together to see what would work, what wouldn't. We actually have some photos of them sort of in their workshop, and they were saying how they didn't have bottling machines. So the way that they got it in the bottles every morning is that they would actually have to siphon it out of big plastic tubs into the bottles. So I think it was Charles Granville joked that every morning would start with a mouthful of Black Satin perfume as he was, by mouth siphoning perfume into bottles. So really, they were kind of scent mad scientists, where they would just sort of mix things together and see what worked, and sort of test it on their wives and neighbors, and apparently they had made their wives the secretary and treasurer of the company without them knowing. The two guys were basically on a train and said, we should form this company. We need board members. Our wives are now part of the company. They don't know it yet. So they were really keen to just sort of try things out. Really entrepreneurs in the sense of like, well, we'll see what works, and if it doesn't, we'll try something new, and if it does work, well, we'll keep expanding. So yeah. We actually, we're fortunate right now to have some of these items on display. We just opened a new exhibit at the Historical Society. It's called Puzzle Pieces. It's sort of a broad overview of Wilton, but we have some stuff that's manufactured locally, and there is a bit of Angelique perfume that is on display.
Oh wow, that's really cool. And I know you mentioned their wives. So was this company mainly just like men working, or is it also like semi-woman based working?
They were the two that owned it at the time.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, this was the late 1940s, early
Correct.
1950s. So it was a primarily sort of men-managed company. But as they expanded and really became an international company, they had quite the workforce here in Wilton and other places.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to do one more question.
Sure.
So it's about the soaps.
Yeah.
So since it was a perfume company, they didn't probably incorporated the scents. And you said it probably didn't end up well for some of the scents.
Yeah.
So like, for the ones that did end up well, so was the soap company like good, or was it more of like a backtrack?
The soap that they produced was a high quality product, I guess, or as much as it was, it definitely sold. Because we know that because we have soap in our collection that was clearly bought and sold. So it wasn't like, we have the mistakes that they made. We do have things that actually went to market and were products that for people to sell. They famously made sort of guest soap. It was the kind of thing that you would put in your guest bathroom to say, like, here's this really nice smelling soap. when you're entertaining somebody, you have friends or family over, the Angelique Perfume Company soap is the one that they're going to use in the bathroom. So they not all the scents worked out well, but when they found a winner, generally speaking, it was something that was a well sold and a popular item.
Okay, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Please go to the Wilton Historical Society. It's great. I've gone there many times, and yeah.
I'll be back next month with a new
Yes, we will be
Museum
back next
Monthly
month.
Fact. Thank you.
Thank you.